when I was driving
Yes.
earlier today, the DJ on the radio, she wanted people to call in and have them tell her what poster they had on their bedroom ceiling as a teenager, where it was like the person that you thought was dreamy or whatever, and you stared at on the bedroom ceiling.
Yeah, it never made sense to me to put a poster on the ceiling. I feel like that would have upset my parents, but but I get what you're saying. Or like, let's say, or on the wall then, because I never had a ceiling poster.
That's fair. I didn't usually put posters on my ceilings either, because I always had a lot of like glow in the dark stars and stuff on my ceiling.
Yes, classic.
But I absolutely had posters on my walls, which I brought to college in our dorm room for sure.
Oh, yes. And they used to have gigantic poster sales at the beginning of the semester. Do you remember that? I so looked forward to going to those poster sales, and I bought so many like posters. Yes. And I brought them back every year, and I'd like add a new one every year too. I don't know. I was really into like artsy stuff at that time. Like I was really excited.
Your posters were always prints of artwork, and mine were just like annoying movie posters.
No, it was a good mix, you know? Like, I think my posters were too serious all the time. So it was good that you had some more normal things for a college girl to have.
Some Johnny Depp.
Yes, exactly. Oh, that's right. Oh my God, I forgot about Johnny Depp.
I had the Johnny Depp. I had the Heath Ledger.
Oh, that's right, A Knight's Tale.
Yep.
Nice.
I had that one.
Oh, that was classic.
And then I had, because I was ski racer, I had the Bodie Miller poster that was signed.
Yes, which I didn't even know was a thing, by the way, like ski racing. So I was like, who's that? You're like, what? Oh my God, it's Bodie Miller.
Exactly. Also, he's from New Hampshire. Anyway.
Yeah, which I didn't know either, because I didn't know who he was, and I didn't know about ski racing.
How did you not know about ski racing?
I knew after you told me. I just like it never crossed my path in terms of like, it was never a sport that I watched. And I don't know, we don't have a ton of like high quality ski resorts here in Indy. So I feel like maybe skiing was just never on my radar at all.
That's true. Cross country though, probably, right?
I don't know. Well, I don't think people are very into skiing here at all. It really doesn't. I mean, some winters, yes, but others, no. And no, there's not really snow sports here. Hi, I'm Katie.
And I'm Emily.
We're two long-distance best friends with a passion for learning about all the things that make everyday life interesting.
We'll share our findings with you on researching the obvious. Okay, well, that poster discussion turned into a discussion of wintertime. So that's fun.
Well, that's okay. Anyway. It's related because, the Winter Olympics were going on at that time, too. I think that's what you were telling me about Bodie Miller.
Oh, probably.
Well, the Olympic news in Indianapolis is the swim trials this year. So when I started reading about it, I was like, oh, this is actually fascinating. And now I'm kind of sad that I didn't go. They set a record on the opening night on June 15th for the largest gathering for a swim meet ever.
Oh, wow.
20,689 fans. They took Lucas Oil Stadium, that's the football stadium for the Colts. They took up all the AstroTurf and they removed all the goalposts. And then they constructed two swimming pools, Olympic swimming pools, one 50 meters and one 25 for warm-ups and cool-downs. They pumped in water to fill them. And they put this gigantic four-sided like scoreboard above the pool so you could see from every side the scores and the standings and everything. And then like when the swimmers had a backstroke or whatever, when they're looking up, they can see what's on the camera. Like they could see themselves or like their competitors and stuff. Yeah. And it apparently was 20 times bigger than when they held the trials in Omaha, like the scoreboard size. 20 times
Oh,
larger. It was a really big undertaking. I had no idea, but
wow.
they built out both of those pools and got them filled and got them ready to go in 3 weeks, which I think is nuts. Like, that takes
Yeah,
some
wait. So
coordination.
when you say they built the pools, they're like above ground
Yes. Yeah.
pools?
I
Oh,
will
whoa.
I will link. There's a really cool time-lapse video on YouTube of them building it over the weeks. So yeah, constructed the pools, brought in like all the piping and plumbing and stuff like that, and then they lined them with a synthetic rubber instead of like concrete or whatever. And then they built a pool deck around both of them too to make it like
Oh,
raised. It took up about an acre of space, they said, with the pool deck, which is also nuts.
dang.
And it's the largest venue that they've ever held a swim event in, because, you know, usually swim events like are in a pool hall, like, right? Like, it's a building that was constructed around a pool. And this, instead, they took a football stadium with 30,000 seats and we're like, no, we'll just build 2 pools in the middle of it and then we can really pack them in. So it was this big thing for Indy. So I was reading the Sports Illustrated article about the construction of the pools and everything. And the writer was describing how when they walked into the stadium, that it was so big, you couldn't smell chlorine. And he was saying, like, and that was really weird because, you know, usually at a swim meet or a swim event, whatever.
Yeah, it's like overpowering.
Yes, like the chlorine hits you in the face, right? Because it's like a smaller enclosed space and the chlorine is everywhere. So yeah, but in the article, he was like, yeah, you don't even really smell the chlorine. You have to be like on the pool deck next to the pool because the Lucas Oil Stadium is just so gigantic.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
Ooh, and then I also saw, and this, I was really jealous that I didn't get to go and see this, and I thought of you because I thought this would be like somewhere we would definitely seek out. But they created a speakeasy type bar called the Dive Bar, and it was below the pool deck. And they had viewing windows into the pools. So you could go into the bar and get a drink, and then you could watch the trials from underneath the pool. Like, how cool is that?
Okay, that's legit. That's legit.
I was like, that. Oh, that was, whoever came up with that idea, mad respect.
Yeah. Something cool about swimming for the current Olympics 2024 Paris is that this year men's artistic swimming is allowed. So, you know, they've always had artistic swimming, but they've never had men's artistic swimming. It's always been women's. And so, men's artistic swimming this year, which, by the way, I don't know if you've ever watched those competitions because usually they're on at weird times, but they're crazy.
I have seen some of those before. It's like fascinating to watch and really impressive. They make it look easy. And I know it's not because I basically can't swim. So
and they're all holding their breath. I know. And they're all holding their breath the whole time. And they're like treading water upside down and crazy stuff. I don't know. It's crazy. But power to the men. They get to take part in synchronized swimming this year.
Oh, I'll have to check that out. But you've always been a big fan of the Olympics. Like, I know you have an Olympics party.
Yes.
Every time.
Yes, I love the Olympics. I guess the pageantry of it is really interesting, and the process that these athletes go through, and, you know, root for people that you might not see on a global stage, right? Because, like, I don't know, some sports don't get a chance to shine like that. In general, it's just cool to see some of these sports that don't necessarily always have a national stage have such a large national
That's cool.
stage.
I guess I never really thought about it like that. I mean, my favorite part of the Olympics, or like, especially my memories like from watching it as a kid, are of the gymnastics. And I think for me, that was always just like, I was so impressed and amazed by like what the athletes are capable of doing. I feel like that was the kind of event that interested me. And then a lot of the other stuff, I was just kind of like, I don't know. I don't understand this sport, so I don't know what I'm watching. You've always been really good at celebrating the Olympics, and I have let them pass me by.
It's one of those times where I feel like you can, like, everyone can talk about this one thing that's weirdly happening on a global level. you know? And
Yep.
to me, it's kind of fun when you're just out and about and you stop in a bar and the sports that they have on TV are like the marathon running. And you're like,
Yeah.
oh, wow, okay, let's sit here and like see what's going on in the marathon. And you know that other people around the world are maybe also watching it. And I think that's kind of cool.
Yeah. Well, it is cool now that I think about it that way. So thanks for that
Mhm.
perspective. So the other thing that I think about when I think about the Olympics is like a bunch of like burly Greek men wrestling. Is that an accurate description of the first Olympics? Like, because
kind of.
it was very different than what it is today, I assume.
Yes. Yeah. It was super different. I looked up some history of both the modern Olympics and the ancient Olympics. Modern Olympics come from this ancient Olympic tradition, but there was like a huge gap in when the ancient Olympics were happening and when the modern Olympics were happening. It's not like we've had Olympics throughout the entire history of humans nonstop. You know what I mean?
Right. Okay.
The ancient Olympics, they started a really long time ago. They started in the year 776 BC. I got this information from a professor of ancient Greece studies.
Okay.
So the Olympics started in 776 BC. And originally, what they were was a festival to honor Zeus. So Zeus was like the primary one. Well, Zeus was one of the primary gods for
Lightning
ancient
bolt.
Greeks. Yes, if we've all seen the movie Hercules,
yes.
You know what he's.
I also know a little bit about Greek mythology. I'm just saying.
Oh, maybe we need an episode on Greek mythos.
Yeah, that would be really interesting, actually. Okay,
it would.
Sorry, back to Zeus.
So this was originally, back to Zeus. So this was originally a festival for Zeus. And so it was held in Olympia because that was considered to be, Zeus's main site where his temple was and things like that. It was a 5-day religious festival to honor Zeus. And it was always held on the third full moon after the summer solstice. So very specific, but only every 4 years. So even in ancient Greece, it was only held every 4 years.
Oh, interesting. So that's been a tradition for a long time.
Yes. And most of the festival was like feasts and sacrifices of oxen and other stuff like just to Zeus. And so the very first Olympics only had one sporting event, and that was a 600-foot running race.
Oh, I was hoping you were going to say wrestling. It just really thought
it wasn't wrestling. It was just a running race.
Okay, all right. Yeah, that sounds kind of anticlimactic, really. Just like run 600 feet. Okay, it's done.
That was it. Yep. But there was so many other things going on. There was, all the sacrifices and the feasting.
Oh, right. Okay, so it was more
stuff,
about the sacrifices and such.
Yes, it was more about just like honoring Zeus. And it was for the first 13 iterations of the Olympics. So for the first 52 years, basically, that the Olympics existed, it only had that one running race. And then the rest of it was like feasting and stuff like that. And what's interesting is, so only men were allowed to go to the Zeus festival because it was for Zeus. And so it was for men and men being in the race and all this.
Well, that's typical.
However, women had their own party. It was just separate.
Oh, nice.
Yep. So
that's actually better.
Yeah, right? I know. So women got to do their own festival for Hera at the same time, like in a side area. And they had their own races and their own dancing and their own parties. So honestly, sounds better, in my opinion.
Yeah. Agreed. No wrestling either, though, just running.
Just the running. Yeah.
Okay, just checking.
So so the first, 50, 60 years, it was just the one race. And then what happened is that ancient Greece, they started to develop these city-states If you know Greek history, you know that the city-states started growing and there started to be a lot of like soldiers, and then you end up with all this
Sparta.
warring. Yes, exactly. Sparta, the Peloponnesian War, like all these like, fighting between the city-states, Homer and everything going on. And so the Olympics started to become this kind of soldier training situation.
Oh, okay.
So a lot of the training that the soldiers would be doing started to get incorporated into the Olympic sports. And the Olympics started to be this thing where each city-state would send their best athletes in these training programs to the Olympics to kind of show off a little bit about how their soldiers were training.
Okay. All right. That makes so that's what kind of made it competitive too.
Yes, and that's also when it started to expand in the types of sports. So that's when you get things like wrestling and chariot racing.
Yeah.
And there was a race where people had to wear armor. So, to make it heavy. Because other than that, most of the sports were done in the nude. So you weren't wrong about the naked wrestling. Yeah. So there were that's when, the pentathlon was introduced in like 500 BC. So you have things like the discus throwing and the javelin throwing and
track and
some
field,
of the things that we still do. Yeah. Some of these things that we still do in the modern Olympics. So that's when that all started. But the ancient Olympics ended. So they ended in 393 CE, Common Era, and that was because the Roman Emperor Theodosius I banned that. Basically, it was during that time that the Roman Emperor, like the Roman Empire, was converting to Christianity, and so they saw this as something pagan. That was or not, because it was originally this religious festival honoring Zeus, and so they said no, the Olympics are banned. So
too many gods, year 400, get out.
So basically, before the year 400, the Olympics were banned.
Dude, religion ruins everything. Just saying.
Yeah. Like what?
It really squashes all the fun.
Yeah. So we have no more Olympics starting in the year 400, which, then the Roman Empire collapses like 100 years later. So joke's on them.
Right. Serves you right.
Serves you right.
Wonder if that
got
would
rid of all the things. Yeah. You got rid of all the cool things people wanted to do, and then you collapsed.
Yep. You stopped sacrificing to those gods. I bet they would have helped you out.
Yeah. Yep. No. Or maybe they still needed to train as soldiers or something, and we weren't doing that because we didn't have the Olympics. I don't know. I don't know. That's all I'm saying. Yep. Coincidence? I think not. Yeah. So for a long time, we didn't have any Olympics at all.
Interesting. So it just went away for a while.
Yep. Just gone. And it wasn't until the late 1800s.
Oh, wow. That's like a huge gap.
Yeah. 1,500 years later. So then in the late 1800s, a French baron, his name was Pierre de Coubertin. That's probably not how you say his last name.
They'll never know.
He was a aristocrat. So basically he lived a life of leisure and was able to pursue what he wanted, which was athletics. He liked doing sports. And in France at the time, intellectualism was very popular as opposed to athletics. And he was jealous of how in the US and the UK, we had like a physical education program in schools and France didn't. And so he started doing all this research about how to bring more physical education and stuff to France. And at this international conference on sport, he basically was like, hey, I think that we should have an international sports competition, because he was basically using it as a reason to increase sports in France.
Okay.
So if there was an international sports competition, then people in France would need to do more sports.
Okay. Wow, that's like a really big carrot to dangle just to get some more activity.
Yeah.
Like, let's just make it a global stage and then we'll have to do something.
Exactly. The international group, they said that would be awesome. People were really behind it. And so they proposed to have the very first games in 1896. So in 1896, they chose Athens because they were like, well, we might as well bring it back to where it started in Greece. They didn't go to Olympia, but they went to Athens. And what's cool is that for the 1896 games in Athens, there was a big fundraising campaign by this international group of, wealthy people.
Yeah.
Basically.
People with money, with funds to raise.
And they helped to basically rebuild one of the ancient Greek stadiums that existed. Oh. So they revitalized this ancient stadium from the ancient times. And that's where they held the first modern Olympics in 1896, was back in that ancient stadium, which I thought special. Was kind of...
Was there a torch? It was
kind of cool. No, fun fact. That was something that I read about too. And the torch relay didn't start until the games that were in Germany. So that was the first time that the torch relay.
Side note, for that period of time of the Olympics, I just recalled that I read that the 1924 Olympics were held in Paris. And incidentally, in 1924, Indianapolis also hosted the men's Olympic swimming trials. So literally 100 years later, the trials came back to Indy, and also the games are being held in Paris. I thought that was pretty cool.
Yeah. And this is the first time that they've been held in Paris since 1924. So, which is also interesting, since it was a French guy that sort of jump-started the whole Olympics again. He wanted to have the first Olympics in Paris, but the committee was like, no, I think it'll be cooler to have it in Greece. But so then the second Olympics in 1900...
I was like, I can't believe the Frenchman didn't want to host it in Paris. Oh, no, he did.
Oh, he
just said no.
Oh, he did.
Yeah, he did.
But so he wanted them in Paris. They were in Greece. And the second Olympics, though, in 1900 were in Paris. And then they were in Paris again in 1924. And now, 100 years later, they're back in Paris again.
Yeah, it's very cool. So, since they didn't hold it in Paris and they went with Athens instead, how do they choose where it's going to be now?
Yeah, so something I found that was interesting was that according to Britannica, Encyclopedia Britannica,
very reliable resource.
Yeah, I think so. When the modern Olympics were established, that committee that was established to oversee them, they decided that the city needed to change every 4 years when they had the Olympics. So even from the beginning, it was sort of written into the idea of the Olympics that it would change every 4 years where the location was. Yeah. And so the way that they pick the cities, it's a whole process, as I'm sure you can imagine. But basically there's
no bureaucracy at all, right?
Yeah,
there's
none whatsoever.
In the selection process.
Super affordable. Yeah. Basically there's the International Olympic Committee and the IOC. They're the ones that sort of oversee the whole Olympic situation. So they make sure that the Olympics happen. They're the ones that, establish the rules and establish the sports and all this stuff. And so if a city wants to host the Olympics, basically they have to come up with a bid that they send to the IOC. So it's like a two-step process to come up with this bid. It starts out where the city itself creates a proposal and sends it to their country's national representatives.
Okay.
So, for example, the 2028 Olympics are going to be held in LA. So,
oh, really?
LA.
That sounds horrible.
Yes.
Like, imagine the traffic.
I was thinking I was going to go. I don't know.
Okay, have fun. Report back.
So basically, like, Los Angeles, that city comes up with a proposal that's like, we want to host the Olympics. Here's what we do and why. Mm-hmm. And then they send it to their U.S. national representatives. Okay. Chicago recently put in a bid to host the Olympics. Really? I think it was in 2016 or something, though. So it was a bit ago. But yeah, so every once in a while, a city in the U.S., they'll say, we want to host the Olympics. And then they have to send it to their national committee and get national support. And then once that city is chosen as the national option, then the national committee submits a proposal to the IOC to say, okay, we want to be considered on an international scale as the option for the next Olympics.
Well, in that case, mark my words, Indianapolis Olympics 2040, give us 10 more years.
You might say this, but it costs a lot of dollars to get chosen. Yes, even before you start building or anything, you have to pay money. So
wait, so you pay in order to have the privilege of hosting the Olympics?
Yes. So
okay.
on the first level, when you're submitting your proposal as a city, you have to pay a entry fee of $150,000 to start being considered. And then when you go to the IOC, you have to pay another entry fee of $500,000.
$500,000?
Yeah. So,
I suppose for some cities that's like chump change, but that seems like a lot.
Yeah. So even before you're selected, though, you're already like $650,000 just for like entry fees. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you have to want it bad.
You have to.
Because like, if you don't get selected, they just like keep your money and they're like, haha.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Wow.
Pretty much. I have a map of all of the countries that have hosted the Olympics and what dates they hosted. I know, maps. But yeah, so it's a cool map because it's just, all the countries that have hosted the Olympics and when and what cities. Cool. But you're not seeing countries in like the global south really hosting the Olympics, right? There's no countries in Africa. There's very few in South America.
Because they
realistically
don't have the
very few in Asia. Right.
Or they don't want to spend the money.
Right. And then once you get selected, the amount of money that you're spending to build all the stadiums and everything is crazy.
Oh yeah, because they have to accommodate all the events, right?
Oh yeah, exactly. So there was a study that was done by some Oxford professors that basically said that every single Olympic Games has gone over budget by large amounts. Like I think the minimum that Olympics has gone over budget is like 60%, but some have gone over budget as much as 320%.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's quite a margin.
Cities are spending billions of dollars on not only building the stadiums themselves, but also the infrastructure that goes with all of these, right? So improving roads so they can ship stuff that's needed to all these stadiums and all this stuff.
Okay. Wow, the logistics of that have to be a nightmare.
Yeah. I know that Paris, the current estimates is that they've spent $8.7 billion.
No. Billion with a B?
With a B.
Oh my God. Okay.
Yeah. And they're expecting that it's going to be 115% over the budget.
Oh, this puts a whole new lens on like your sentimental perspective of the Olympics and like this global stage.
I know.
That's like international excellence and competition and good faith, like for a price. Hello.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Even the most expensive Olympics so far was the Sochi Olympics in Russia, which I don't know if you remember some of the stuff that came out of that Olympics, but
there were a lot of issues.
And apparently they spent $50 billion.
Oh
50 billion.
Oh my God. Okay.
Yes,
Olympics,
to
big
be
business.
able to host. I mean, that said, some cities really want to host it because it's a way to get that infrastructure funding. So for example, I don't know the particulars about Sochi, but maybe that country, like that city in Russia, maybe they were hoping to get money from, the Russian government to help rebuild some of their streets and other things like that.
Seems like a very expensive route to improvement, but okay, I get it.
Yeah. Yeah. And, they always say the tourism too.
Well,
But there's been mixed reviews of whether or not the tourism actually increases and jobs. But again, mixed. So it is a process to become an Olympic host city. And because of the growing expenses of the Olympics, recently it's become a bit of an issue where they're actually having a difficult time finding cities who are willing to host them. And so
they're going to have to lower their prices a little.
Well, recently it's just, who's even willing to do it. And so now there's a thought process of, well, maybe there will just be a handful of cities that the Olympics sort of rotates.
Oh, really?
Between.
Okay.
Yeah. So who knows? Who knows what we'll see? But that's some of the recent thoughts.
Very
that
interesting. I read. So you spend a buttload of money. You get picked to host the Olympics. You build all the buildings.
Things that need to get built because there's so many different
how many sports? Yeah, how many sports are in the Olympics today? Because I know sometimes it changes, right? Like they add new ones in.
Yes. So that's an interesting thing that I read too. So we were talking about the ancient Olympics was basically track and field with a little bit of some chariot racing and wrestling, that kind of stuff. And so when the Olympics restarted into the modern games, it was kind of similar. There was a marathon run. So the ancient Olympics didn't have a marathon run. The marathon started as an Olympic sport when the Olympics were started again in modern times as a way to sort of honor the tradition of the marathon. If you're not familiar, the marathon is a race that commemorates...
It's just running 26 miles for no reason other than you like to suffer.
It's a specific. There's an island called Marathon. And basically what was happening is that there was this famous battle between the Persians and Athens, and he needed to send a message. And so he ran literally across the whole island to deliver this message. And after he delivered it, he fell down and died, which is a whole situation.
Wow. Wow. Okay. So like I did not know that at all.
Yeah.
So I guess I don't know as much about Greek mythology as I thought. Or history, I guess, if it really happened. But no, okay, so I just always thought people like just were running 26 miles for no reason other than they like pain. Like
No. It was definitely, the length is based on the length of the Greek, the ancient Greek distance that he ran. Yes.
Fascinating. But I still will never do it.
That's why the marathon is included in the Olympics. And that was one of the first sports. So, the original Olympics in modern times had mostly track and field, some fencing, some shooting sports, like with rifles and stuff, some weightlifting, swimming.
Oh, so swimming's been
and then
around a long time. Then.
Yes. And then cycling. Cycling was like a big sport too. So those are like sort of the classic sports that were in the first Olympics that are still currently in the Olympics. There's some sports that were in the first Olympics that are no longer in the Olympics because they just don't exist as Olympic sports anymore. Tug of war was a big
That's awesome.
Olympic sport.
Yes.
Back in the day.
Okay.
What else was croquet? Croquet was an Olympic sport at one time.
I would bring that one back. I would watch some people do croquet.
Lawn tennis. Lawn tennis was a version of tennis that used to be played in the Olympics, but now is not.
Like the precursor
and then
to
there was
pickleball or something.
Yeah, kind of. It's like one of those ones where you're sort of like in a court with like sides.
Yeah. Okay.
I don't know. I always think of that scene
like
in Ever After where they go to play tennis.
Oh yes. Okay. Yes.
It's that tennis.
Okay. Lawn tennis. I got it now.
Yeah. And then there were some sports that were originally included that were water motorsports, so like water skiing. But then there was a sort of like referendum that basically said that the Olympics couldn't include anything with a motor.
Okay, because it's supposed to be about human athleticism.
Yes. So now there's no motor sports at all in any Olympics.
Okay. Interesting.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so those are some of the outdated. What also I thought was interesting is lacrosse was in the Olympics back in 1912.
Okay. It's no longer in the Olympics, though?
But then, no, that was the only Olympics it was in.
That's interesting.
Until the next Olympics in 2028, they're going to bring lacrosse back. So
cool.
That's an exciting moment.
Lacrosse is pretty big in some regions, right? Like I know you said in upstate New York, it's very popular.
Oh yeah, and Maryland for sure.
Yeah, Maryland too.
Really popular. Yeah. Hopkins has a huge lacrosse, and then obviously Syracuse has a huge lacrosse team as well. So that'll be kind of cool to have an old sport getting brought back.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
No lawn tennis though.
No tug of war. No lawn tennis. So basically there was these kind of core sports that have always existed in the modern Olympics. So the marathon running, the 50-yard dash, the javelin throwing, the swimming events, these types of things. Today in the Olympics there's 30 core sports.
Okay.
And so what's considered a core what's considered a core sport is like swimming is the sport, and then within swimming there's a ton of different events.
Oh, okay. So right. So core sport is the big bucket, and then all of the like little sub parts of that.
Yes. So swimming right now there's the core sport, and then there's 35 different swimming events.
Oh my God. Okay.
Yeah, right. So it's like the butterfly, the relay, the freestyle, the, you know what I mean? All the different
distances. I'm thinking of like, gymnastics, I'm sure is a core sport then. And then they have like floor and bars and team and individual and.
Exactly. Or like the track and field is technically called athletics, right? But there's 48 different events. Yeah, because you've got all the different races, and then all the women's versus the men's, and all that stuff. Yeah, so now there's 30 core sports. I have this really cool timeline that I found of Summer Olympic sports and the number of events for each year, and it goes all the way back to the first Olympics. So we can share that.
Oh yes, I'm looking at this timeline. This is awesome.
Yeah,
gymnastics, artistic,
it's really cool.
Rhythmic trampoline. And there are 14 events now.
And so every year, the host city can propose up to 6 optional sports that can be added to the year. So if it hasn't been officially approved as a core sport yet, the host city can propose it. So this year, they're bringing back some of the same sports that we saw at previous cities. So surfing is coming back.
Ooh,
surfing
yay.
debuted in Tokyo. Yeah. What's actually cool about the Paris surfing is it's going to be happening in Tahiti because France doesn't really have waves
Surfing
to
waters.
surf on very
Yeah.
much. But, you know, being a colonial power, they have Tahiti. So technically, it's a French
They got that in their
property.
back pocket. They were like, we've been waiting for this, Tahiti. We knew we'd need your ocean.
Yes. Exactly. So surfing's coming back, skateboarding is coming back, and sport climbing, which is sort of a combination of bouldering and mountain
Man. That's
climbing.
so cool. I think those people are amazing.
Crazy. Yeah. So those are coming back. And then we're getting one new sport this year for the first time, which is called breaking, but it's basically break dancing.
Really?
So, yes.
Okay. I would watch
break
that.
dancing.
I love some dance.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So break dancing this year.
Cool.
For the first and maybe only time.
Yeah.
We'll be in the Olympics.
I bet it'll be insanely popular. Let's make it popular. Because I want that to come back. I'm going to watch that.
And then for 2028, they've already approved what the new sports are going to be, which is why breaking, sadly, it might be the only time ever this year because breaking is going to be dropped. But the sports that are going to be coming for 2028 are, like I said, lacrosse, squash.
Oh, interesting.
Flag football.
Really?
Mm-hmm. Cricket. And baseball/softball. So men's, women's.
Oh, okay. I'm kind of surprised cricket was not a sport. I mean, I feel like that's insanely popular.
Yeah. So baseball and softball were in the Olympics for a little bit. They were in the Olympics starting in 1992 and stopping in 2008. One of the reasons that was cited for why they stopped was because apparently finding stadiums for baseball was too difficult because it's very specific shape and stuff of stadium.
Yeah.
That then doesn't really get used anywhere besides the US and Japan.
Yeah. Okay.
But in 2020, baseball was brought back because it was in Tokyo. Baseball's huge there.
Yes.
So it's not in the Olympics this year, but then the US we're gonna bring it back again. And what's pretty cool actually is Oklahoma City was just approved to host the softball games.
Cool.
So if you're familiar with collegiate softball, which in the United States that's pretty much the cream of the crop for softball, Oklahoma is really top of the line for softball. So it's kind of exciting to see that happening in Oklahoma City. And kind of cool that, I don't know, LA doesn't have to build a bunch of softball stadiums. They're just going to have the softball over in Oklahoma City.
Yeah. Good for them.
Yep.
Good for OKC.
Yeah. They're going to host the canoe slalom as well in Oklahoma City.
Canoe slalom? Excuse me? What?
Yeah, prepare for that.
What?
This is not a new sport, Katie. You should be familiar with canoe.
I don't know any of these. I told you. I don't know how the sport works. I tune out. I watch the gymnastics. I used to watch the figure skating. Okay, but that's it.
I mean, for you and for other listeners, I highly recommend checking out some of these more obscure sports. They're shockingly amazing. I remember watching during the Tokyo Olympics the open water marathon swimming.
Oh, wow. Okay.
That was blowing my mind because they basically have these little floaty raft things that their coaches stand on in the middle of just open ocean. Mm-hmm. And the swimmers are swimming a marathon swim. And every time they'd come by the coaches have these little grabber arms where they can reach out and give them an energy pouch or water or whatever.
Okay.
And so the swimmers just grab it off this grabber arm and keep swimming.
Oh my God. That's intense.
Yeah, because you can't swim 26 miles without any kind of sustenance.
Well, yeah, I guess that makes sense. I mean, I don't know. These people do crazy things. The human body is capable of crazy things. So I don't know. I mean,
yeah, it's crazy. I also recommend the archery competitions. Those are also crazy to watch.
Okay. Really?
And canoeing is interesting
how
too.
How many times can you watch someone like shoot an arrow? Like, describe to me what's entertaining about it.
I mean, it just gets so, I feel like there's just like the drama where you're like, oh my gosh, she has to make this shot. And
okay, I'm gonna give it a try. I feel like I'm gonna give it a try.
Yeah. You also learn about other people because you're like, these women from Mongolia are literally the best archers in the world.
Oh, okay. That's kind of, yeah, okay. All right. You're cool. Convincing me. So now let's start from the beginning. You pay a buttload of money. You host the Olympics.
Yeah.
You build all the buildings. You have all these crazy sports. And then what happens when everybody leaves? And for the swim trials, right? They built those pools in 3 weeks and then they like disassembled them just as fast. And we're like, okay, back to normal. But I imagine there's a lot more infrastructure for the like entire Olympic event.
Well, yeah, because it's crazy, right? Because they're building basically a stadium for every event. I mean, obviously the swimming, it's all taking place in one swimming facility, right? But still, you're building a swimming facility. So they're building all these pretty hyper-specific stadiums, which is why it's billions of dollars going into this stuff, because these cities don't just like have all of these facilities for all these specific sports necessarily.
Right.
So it's mixed what happens to these stadiums after the games conclude. Sometimes the stadiums are able to be repurposed. So for example, the stadium in Atlanta where the Braves play, that was originally built for the 1996 Olympics in Atlanta. And so they got rid of the old baseball stadium that the Braves had been playing in, and they basically just moved to the new one that was built for the Olympics. So sometimes a stadium will get repurposed and used for something else. Sometimes it just gets demolished if you can afford to demolish
just,
it.
Tear it all down.
Just tear it all down. Sometimes like the housing that they put up for all the athletes and stuff. I know the housing that was built for the athletes in London, for example, the London Games in 2012, that was just converted into like apartments. So they just converted the housing to apartments. But a lot of times, unfortunately, the stadiums just kind of wither and
like just sit
fall
there
into disrepair.
They just forget about it. They're just like, oh, you had a couple of weeks of glory and now you can just be an empty, unused building.
Yep. Sad. I found this whole article from Business Insider that's just literally pictures of abandoned Olympic stadiums. We'll definitely link that in the show notes because it's crazy to look at. Some of these weird. abandoned empty facilities, because of course it costs money to upkeep a facility. Right. And so if you're not having a purpose for it, paying the money to keep it up is kind of like, do we want to spend that money? There's a ton of pictures in particular from the 2004 games in Athens, particularly because in Athens, they spent quite a bit over budget building all these stadiums. And then only a few years later was when Greece had that huge financial crisis. And a lot of people speculate that one of the reasons for the Greek financial crisis was a direct result of spending the money on hosting the Olympics.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Because we learned it's freaking expensive.
Yeah. Wow. And so there's just a ton of stadiums that are just, crumbling, in disrepair.
I can't think of anything else to do with them. I mean, I guess like you said, it would cost more money.
And the other crazy part too is sometimes in order to even build the stadiums to begin with, which in the US, we should be a little bit familiar with this just because of building NFL stadiums and baseball stadiums and stuff. But a lot of times to build the stadiums to begin with, you're displacing people from their homes. The city can use eminent domain laws and just say, well, we need to build this stadium for the Olympics. And so we need your land that your house is on. And so, yeah, people are getting displaced. So I don't know. I love the Olympics, but there is this sort of underbelly of it that makes me think maybe it would be worth it to have a handful of cities that you're kind of rotating between. And right.
And then the facilities or doing something used.
Right. Or doing something like I do legitimately think it's a good idea for the LA Olympics to host the softball and stuff in Oklahoma City, because they already have some facilities.
Not creating a whole stadium just for.
Exactly. Try to maybe do more of like a host country situation. Although, I mean, that probably works for the US, but maybe not for smaller countries. But maybe get a couple countries together and have a few stadiums just spread out a little bit more. I don't know. Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah.
I can't say that I ever really thought about what happened after the Olympics were over. But these pictures are kind of sad.
They're a little disturbing.
Yeah, they are. It's like kind of eerie. Like,
yeah.
Like
there's a whole
post-apocalyptic a little bit.
Yeah, there's a whole like subgenre of geography where people look at what's called ruin porn, and it's basically looking at pictures of gazing upon ruins as like a I don't know, fixation. But yeah, I feel like these fit in to that for sure.
Yeah. Wow.
So the Olympics are, like I said, they're crazy. It's cool to see some stuff get an international spotlight that might not else. It's cool to see the athletes on a different level, different sports. But yeah, also a little concerning about some of the costs, human and monetary.
And spatial, physical.
Yeah.
For the city, man. Well, I have to say, I did not know much about the Olympics. And the most surprising thing, or the thing that like never occurred to me, that I really am going like, oh wow, yeah, so obviously it is that. But like really how freaking expensive it is. I had no idea that it costs so much money to put on the event and to even apply to host it. That's like, really? That kind of blew my mind. I just didn't even think about like the price tag associated with it.
I think for me, which again feels very obvious, but I guess I never connected the dots, was the fact like the ancient Olympics were tied to a religious festival.
Yeah.
Right? Like it was really about honoring Zeus.
Not about the athletics.
And we've kind of transitioned it so that modern Olympics are more about, international relations and athleticism and things like this.
The spirit of competition.
Interesting. But also friendship.
Okay, sure, yeah.
I mean, that's what it's supposed to be, right?
It's an expensive freaking friendship. That's all I'm saying. Like, I don't know. Like, no offense, I'd never spend that much on you. Because I don't have it, though.
That's fair.
If I had billions of dollars to spare, you would definitely get some.
I would hope I'd benefit. Thank you for listening to Researching the Obvious. To learn more fun facts about everything that we're researching, follow us on Instagram at Researching the Obvious Pod, all one word. You can also follow us on Spotify, Amazon Music, or wherever you get your podcasts. If you know someone that you think would enjoy listening to all of our findings, please feel free to share or give us a review. Researching the Obvious is written, produced, edited, and hosted by Emily Fekete and Katie Nakanishi. Tune in next time to hear more obvious facts.